The gunshot cracked the suburban afternoon like thunder from a clear sky. One moment, 7-year-old Lily Reeves was walking her German Shepherd, Shadow, along the sun-dappled sidewalk of Oak Ridge Drive. The next, her world exploded into chaos. Shadow's body crumpled to the pavement as the masked robbers fled the scene, his silver-tipped coat rapidly darkening with blood. Shadow! Lily's scream tore through the air raw and primal as her small hands desperately pressed against the wound, dark eyes wide with disbelief and horror. 3 days later, Commander Jack Reeves was extracted from a classified operation in a remote mountain range halfway across the world. The message had come through secure channels, bypassing normal protocols. "Commander, your daughter needs you. Shadow is dead." As the military helicopter lifted him from the mission he'd spent months preparing for, Jack couldn't shake the cold certainty settling in his bones. What the robbers couldn't have known as they pulled the trigger was that they had just killed the beloved companion of a grieving child, whose father possessed a very particular set of skills that would become their worst nightmare. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Oak Ridge. Maine presented two faces to the world, to summer tourists. It was postcard perfect, a quaint coastal town with white-steepled churches, lobster shacks, and sailboats dotting the harbor. To its year-round residents, it was a community of stark contrasts, multi-million-dollar oceanfront estates, sharing the same zip code with modest blue-collar neighborhoods. The Reeves family occupied the middle ground, their comfortable colonial home sitting on the boundary between these two worlds. At 38, Commander Jack Reeves carried his elite military status like an invisible shield. His 6'2" frame moved with the contained power of someone who knew exactly how lethal he could be. 15 years in Delta Force had honed his body into a precision instrument and etched permanent vigilance into his features. But those who knew him well recognized the gentle hands that braided his daughter's hair each morning and the warm laugh reserved solely for her. Widowhood and single parenthood had carved new lines around his eyes. While his deployments weighed heavily on his conscience, each separation from Lily a fresh wound. 7-year-old Lily Reeves had known grief far too intimately. Cancer had stolen her mother Emily 2 years ago, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. Once a bubbly child with an infectious laugh, Lily had retreated into silence after her mother's passing, her warm brown eyes so like her mother's dimming considerably. It was Shadow who had slowly coaxed her back into the world, the silver-tipped German Shepherd, a former military service dog retrained as a companion animal, understood commands in 4 languages, and could sense Lily's nightmares before they fully manifested. Catherine Kate Reeves, Jack's younger sister, kept their family functioning during his deployments. At 35, she'd built a formidable reputation as a civil rights attorney while serving as Lily's surrogate mother. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, their 82-year-old neighbor with razor-sharp perception, completed their support network, always keeping a watchful eye from her porch across the street. What none of them realized was that Oak Ridge's picture-perfect facade concealed darker currents, and that Shadow's death was merely the first ripple of a storm that had been brewing long before Jack Reeves had moved his grieving family to this coastal haven. The late September afternoon wrapped Oak Ridge in golden light as Lily clipped Shadow's leash to his collar. The German Shepherd stood patiently as she double-checked the attachment, his tail sweeping gentle arcs across the hardwood floor. Jack had been deployed for 3 weeks now, one of his shorter missions. He'd promised, and their daily walks had become Lily's anchor, a ritual that kept her connected to the rhythms of ordinary life while her father was away. "We'll be back before dinner. Aunt Kate," Lily called. Catherine looked up from legal briefs spread across the kitchen table and smiled, her reading glasses perched low on her nose. "Stay on the main paths," Catherine reminded her, "and be back before 5. I'm making your favorite pasta." Outside, the neighborhood gleamed with privilege-manicured lawns, luxury vehicles in circular driveways, children's toys that cost more than some people's monthly rent. The Reeves house, while comfortable, was modest by Oak Ridge standards. In her 3 months here, Lily had already learned which neighbors smiled at her and which averted their eyes, which houses Shadow should give wide berth to, and which elderly residents appreciated his dignified demeanor. "Looking handsome today, Shadow," Mrs. Whitman called from her porch as they passed. Lily waved back, appreciating how the old woman always acknowledged Shadow first, understanding instinctively that the dog was Lily's bridge to communication. They followed their usual route past the community park, where younger children played under watchful nanny supervision. Shadow walked precisely at Lily's left side, matching her pace, occasionally glancing up to check her expression. His presence beside her kept the whispered comments and curious stares at bay people were less likely to approach a child with a large German shepherd, even one as well-behaved as Shadow. Near the 2-mile marker of their walk, they turned onto Maple Avenue, a street of particularly grand homes set back from the road behind ornate gates and hedges. Lily liked this street for its magnificent maple trees, now beginning to turn crimson and gold. Shadow's ears suddenly pricked forward, his body tensing slightly. Lily followed his gaze to a black SUV parked half on the sidewalk outside the Martinsons' estate, its driver's door hanging open. Before she could process this unusual sight, 3 men in dark clothing burst through the Martinsons' side gate. They wore ski masks and carried duffel bags. The lead man stopped short when he spotted Lily and Shadow, his body language registering surprise and then immediate calculation. Shadow moved instantly, positioning himself between Lily and the strangers, his posture shifting into the protective stance Jack had trained him to assume when detecting a threat. Not aggressive, not yet, but clearly communicating a boundary. "Get the kid out of the way," one man hissed to another. The second man approached, keeping his eyes on Shadow. "Hey there, little girl. You should run on home now. Your dog looks mean." Shadow's low, warning rumble emerged not a growl but a clear signal. Lily gripped his leash tighter, a tremor of fear running through her small body. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "If Shadow acts protective, trust him. He senses things we can't." "Please leave us alone," Lily said, her voice barely audible. She took a step backward, and Shadow moved with her in perfect synchronization. "We don't have time for this," the third man snapped, glancing nervously toward the street. "Deal with it." The second man reached inside his jacket, and Shadow's demeanor changed instantly. A bark erupted, forceful and commanding, as he lunged forward to the full extension of his leash, placing himself directly in front of Lily. "God damn it!" the first man shouted, revealing a handgun that had been concealed beneath his jacket. "Shut that dog up!" Everything happened too quickly for Lily to comprehend. Shadow launched himself toward the armed man as the gun raised. The crack of the gunshot echoed between the houses, seeming to freeze time itself. Shadow yelped once, a sound Lily had never heard from him before, and collapsed mid-leap, his momentum carrying his body forward onto the pavement. Shadow! Lily's scream tore through the afternoon stillness as she dropped to her knees beside him. Her small hands pressed against the wound in his chest, blood seeping between her fingers. Shadow's intelligent eyes found hers, confusion and pain evident but still focused on her face. "Let's go now." The first man grabbed his companions, and they sprinted toward the SUV, tires squealing as they accelerated away. "Please, Shadow, stay with me," Lily sobbed, pressing harder against the wound. "Please don't go. Daddy will fix you when he comes home. Please." Shadow's tail thumped once against the pavement, a final effort to comfort her, and then stilled. The light in his eyes dimmed as Lily's world collapsed into a singularity of grief. "He's gone," she whispered, voice hollow with disbelief. "They killed him." From her porch across the street, Mrs. Whitman had witnessed everything. Her arthritic fingers fumbled with her phone as she dialed 911, her voice clear and firm as she reported what she'd seen. "3 armed men just shot a little girl's dog," she told the dispatcher. "They were robbing the Martinson place. The dog was protecting her. I'm going to her now. She's alone with her dead dog in the middle of the street." As Lily cradled Shadow's head in her lap, his blood soaking her favorite blue jeans and NASA t-shirt, Mrs. Whitman approached slowly, her elderly frame moving as quickly as her arthritis would allow. "Lily, sweetheart," she called gently. "I've called for help." But Lily couldn't hear anything beyond the roaring in her ears, couldn't feel anything beyond the cooling body of her protector beneath her trembling hands. Shadow had been her voice when words failed, her comfort when nightmares came, her bridge to a world that had become terrifying after her mother's death. And now he was gone. When police officers Miller and Thompson arrived 7 minutes later, they found Lily still cradling Shadow's head, rocking slightly back and forth, her small face vacant with shock. Mrs. Whitman stood protectively nearby, her expression fierce as she recounted what had happened. "It's just a dog, ma'am," Officer Miller said dismissively after taking minimal notes. "We'll focus on the robbery. Animal control will handle the remains. That just a dog saved this child's life." Mrs. Whitman snapped, her voice shaking with indignation. "And his name is Shadow!" Catherine arrived moments later. Alerted by Mrs. Whitman's second call, she gathered her shell-shocked niece into her arms, her own tears falling freely as she thanked the elderly neighbor. "Her father," Catherine whispered to Mrs. Whitman. "He needs to know." "The military man?" Mrs. Whitman asked. Catherine nodded, looking down at Lily's blood-covered hands and vacant expression. "God help those men when he finds out," Mrs. Whitman murmured. "God help them all." The military transport touched down at 0200 hours, its engines still whining as Jack Reeves descended the ramp. His commanding officer had extracted him mid-mission after Catherine's urgent message reached the proper channels, the gravity of the situation apparent even through military protocols. During the journey home, Jack had spoken only when necessary, his mind consumed with a single purpose: reaching his daughter. Detective Sarah Blackwood waited on the tarmac, her badge glinting under the airfield lights. At 42, she carried herself with the weary confidence of someone who had seen the worst of humanity but hadn't surrendered to cynicism. "Commander Reeves," she extended her hand, "I volunteered to pick you up. I'm handling Shadow's case." Jack's grip was firm but distracted, his eyes already scanning the surroundings as if expecting threats. "My daughter, your sister, has her at home. She's physically unharmed but hasn't spoken since it happened." Blackwood's voice softened. I have a daughter, too. I understand. The drive from the airfield to Oak Ridge passed in relative silence. Jack stared at the passing landscape, his military training allowing him to compartmentalize his emotions while his tactical mind processed the limited information he had. Only someone familiar with Delta Force operators would recognize the deadly calm that had settled over him, not absence of emotion, but emotion channeled into focused purpose. The official report calls it a regrettable incident during a property crime, Blackwood said eventually, breaking the silence. I disagree. The positioning of your dog's body. The witness statement Shadow was actively protecting your daughter. He was trained to... Jack's voice was steady, controlled. Former military working dog. I adopted him after my wife died. Blackwood nodded. I suspected as much. Most burglars run from dogs. They don't shoot them. These men made a choice to fire in a residential neighborhood, with a child present. Jack's gaze shifted to her. You think this wasn't random? I think it deserves more investigation than my department is giving it. Blackwood's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Some of my colleagues are dismissing it as just a dog and focusing solely on the Martinson robbery. The Reeves house was dark except for the porch light and a soft glow from the kitchen window when they arrived. Jack thanked Blackwood, accepting her business card with a promise to call the next day. The front door opened before he reached it, Catherine's silhouette appearing in the doorway. She's asleep, Catherine whispered, embracing her brother tightly. Finally. I had to give her the children's sedative the doctor prescribed. She wouldn't stop shaking. Jack moved through the house with the silent precision that had kept him alive in hostile territory, heading straight to Lily's bedroom. He paused in the doorway, his chest tightening at the sight of his daughter's small form curled around Shadow's empty bed, her hands still faintly stained with dried blood despite Catherine's attempts to clean them. He knelt beside her bed, gently brushing hair from her forehead. Lily stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering. Daddy. Her voice was fragile, disbelieving. I'm here, sweetheart. Jack gathered her into his arms as she fully awakened, her body trembling against his. They killed Shadow, she whispered into his shoulder. He was trying to protect me. I know, baby. Jack held her, his disciplined control threatening to crack. I know. He was so brave, Lily continued, her words tumbling out now that the dam had broken. There were 3 bad men with masks. Shadow knew they were bad. He stood in front of me. Her small body shook with renewed sobs. There was so much blood. Daddy, I tried to stop it like you taught me, but I couldn't. Jack closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself. You did everything right, Lily. Shadow did his job perfectly. He protected the most precious thing in the world. They sat together through the remaining hours of darkness, Lily eventually falling back into exhausted sleep in her father's arms. Jack remained awake, his mind methodically sorting through questions, scenarios, and suspicions that Detective Blackwood's comments had triggered. Morning light was filtering through the curtains when Catherine appeared in the doorway with coffee. Jack carefully extricated himself from Lily's grasp, tucking the blankets around her before following his sister to the kitchen. The police report, he said without preamble. Catherine slid a thin folder across the table. Detective Blackwood dropped it off yesterday. It's incomplete at best, negligent at worst. Jack scanned the documents, his expression hardening. Witness statements from Mrs. Whitman are minimized. No ballistics, no follow-up on the vehicle description. He looked up. This isn't just incomplete, it's deliberately superficial. I thought the same thing, Catherine agreed, stirring her coffee. Blackwood seems to be the only officer taking this seriously. Did they recover the bullet? No. Officer Miller said it wasn't necessary for a dog shooting. The disgust in Catherine's voice was evident. Jack's jaw tightened. Shadow's body. Animal control took him. Catherine's voice wavered slightly. I made arrangements with a pet cremation service. I thought Lily might want his ashes. Jack nodded, grateful for his sister's foresight. I need to see where it happened. An hour later, after ensuring Lily was comfortably settled with Mrs. Whitman, who had insisted on coming over, Jack and Catherine stood on Maple Avenue. The blood stain on the pavement remained visible despite recent rain, a dark reminder that sent a cold spike of rage through Jack's carefully maintained composure. It was right here, Catherine said quietly. Mrs. Whitman says Shadow positioned himself between Lily and the men. He only lunged when one reached into his jacket. Jack knelt, examining the pavement with the critical eye of someone who had analyzed countless combat scenes. Defensive posture, he murmured. Not attack. Protection. His attention shifted to the Martinson estate, its ornate gates and security cameras clearly visible. Have the police reviewed the security footage? Supposedly, yes. But they claim it didn't capture the shooting, clearly just 3 men running from the property. Jack stood, his gaze sweeping the street methodically. There, he pointed to a house across from the Martinsons. Security camera on the garage, angled toward the street. Before Catherine could respond, the deep rumble of a motorcycle announced Detective Blackwood's arrival. She parked beside them, removing her helmet. I thought I'd find you here, she said, approaching. I've been making inquiries about that security footage. Turns out, Officer Miller collected it but never logged it into evidence. Jack's eyes narrowed. That's a serious procedural violation. One of many in this case. Blackwood crossed her arms. There's something you both should know. This robbery fits a pattern we've been seeing: high-end homes, daytime entries, military precision timing. 5 similar incidents in coastal towns within 50 miles in the past 3 months, and you think they're connected, Catherine stated. I do. But more concerning, Blackwood hesitated, glancing at Jack. In 3 of these cases, the homeowners had connections to military personnel. Jack absorbed this information, pieces beginning to align in his tactical assessment. Not random, he said, echoing his earlier suspicion. I'm trying to reopen the investigation properly. Blackwood continued, but I'm hitting resistance from Lieutenant Peterson, my superior. He insists it's just a string of opportunistic property crimes. Why would he block a legitimate investigation? Catherine's attorney instincts were clearly triggered. That's what I'd like to know. Blackwood's expression was grim. Commander, when I saw your name and background in Lily's file, I did some checking. Your particular branch of service caught my attention. Jack remained silent, neither confirming nor denying anything about his classified role. My brother served with Special Forces in Afghanistan. Blackwood continued. He always said that Delta operators had a particular way of handling situations: thorough, methodical, and absolutely relentless. Your point, Detective. Jack's voice remained neutral. My point is that I believe there's more to these robberies than simple theft, and I'm concerned about why my department seems intent on minimizing this investigation. I'm also concerned about what you might be planning to do independently. Their conversation was interrupted by Catherine's phone ringing. Her expression shifted to concern as she listened. "We need to get back," she said after ending the call. "Lily's awake and asking for you, Jack. She's agitated." As they prepared to leave, Blackwood handed Jack a small evidence bag. "I managed to secure this before it disappeared. It was found in the gutter near where Shadow was shot. Not in my official report yet." Inside the bag was a weathered military challenge coin, the kind given to service members for outstanding achievements. The insignia had been deliberately scratched out, but around the edge, barely visible, were the words, "For those who hunt in the shadows." "This isn't from any official military unit I recognize," Blackwood said. "Thought you might have insights." Jack studied the coin, a cold certainty settling in his bones. "This isn't random," he repeated, but this time his voice carried the absolute conviction of a man who had just found the first thread of a tangled conspiracy, one that had cost his daughter's beloved companion his life, and one that Jack Reeves was now irrevocably committed to unraveling. Jack Reeves settled into the rhythm of surveillance with practiced ease. The rental sedan, deliberately nondescript, was positioned with clear sight lines to the Coastal Arms Tavern, a weathered establishment on the outskirts of Oak Ridge where Thomas Riley, an associate of Ethan Walsh, reportedly drank most evenings. 3 days of meticulous investigation had yielded a preliminary network of suspects, their patterns, and potential hideouts. Jack had called in no favors, involved no former colleagues. This was personal, and he would handle it accordingly. His phone vibrated with a text from Catherine. "Lily, finally asleep. Talked about Shadow today without crying. Progress." A small weight lifted from Jack's shoulders. Lily had barely spoken since his return, but each day brought tiny improvements, a whispered question here, a fleeting smile there. The child psychologist Catherine had engaged emphasized that recovery would come in microscopic increments, not dramatic breakthroughs. Movement at the tavern entrance drew Jack's attention back to his surveillance. Riley emerged, his gait slightly unsteady from alcohol. Accompanied by a taller man Jack instantly recognized from security footage Marcus Dawson, another Walsh associate. Both men had military backgrounds, dishonorably discharged from conventional units, nothing elite and extensive criminal records. Jack documented their interaction with the microphone-equipped, high-resolution camera he'd purchased with cash from a photography shop 3 towns over. As they parted ways, Jack made a quick decision, following Dawson's truck rather than staying on Riley. The more aggressive of the two, Dawson had a known history of violence and likely carried more operational information. 20 minutes later, Dawson's truck turned down a poorly maintained access road leading to a cluster of storage units nestled against the coastline. Jack parked at a discreet distance, using night vision binoculars to observe Dawson entering Unit 17 with a duffel bag similar to those carried by the robbers. He would return later. For now, he had identified another piece of the puzzle. Dawn found Jack in his home office, walls now covered with maps, timelines, and surveillance photos. He'd established a war room of sorts, the tactical approach familiar from his military operations. Catherine entered with coffee, surveying his work with growing concern. "Jack," she said carefully, "this is becoming more than investigating Shadow's death." He didn't look up from the satellite image he was annotating. "It was never just about Shadow." Detective Blackwood called. "She's worried about your intensity." Catherine placed the coffee beside him. "So am I. I'm fine. Are you?" Because this, she gestured to the wall of evidence, looks like someone preparing for war. Now Jack did look up, his expression softening slightly at the genuine concern in his sister's eyes. Not war, justice. There's a difference between justice and vengeance, Catherine reminded him gently. Lily needs her father, not an avenger. Before Jack could respond, his secure phone, the one only his military command knew, buzzed with an incoming call. The number was unfamiliar. Reeves, he answered. Voice neutral. Commander. The male voice was tentative, young. This is Officer Parker, Oak Ridge PD. We need to talk. About Shadow's case, the evidence that's gone missing. The coin Detective Blackwood found. Parker's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. Not over the phone. In person. Jack arranged a meeting at a coffee shop 20 miles from Oak Ridge. Before leaving, he checked on Lily, who was attempting to eat the breakfast Mrs. Whitman had prepared. Her small hands still trembled occasionally, but her eyes, so like Emily's, met his with growing steadiness. Will you be gone long, Daddy? Her voice remained soft, as if speaking too loudly might shatter something fragile. Just a few hours, sweetheart. He knelt beside her chair. Aunt Kate and Mrs. Whitman will be right here. Lily nodded, then reached for his hand. Are you trying to find the bad men who hurt Shadow? The directness of her question startled him. She had barely spoken about the incident since his return. Yes, he answered honestly. I want to make sure they can't hurt anyone else. Shadow would want that, she said with childlike certainty. He always tried to protect people. Jack's throat tightened. He was the very best dog. Lily's fingers tightened around his. Be careful, Daddy. They're really bad men. Officer Thomas Parker was younger than Jack had expected. Perhaps 25, with the nervous energy of someone violating protocol and well aware of the consequences. He'd chosen a corner table with clear views of all entrances, a tactical choice that Jack noted with approval. Thank you for meeting me, Commander. Parker began after Jack sat down. What I'm doing could cost me my job, but something's wrong in the department. Really wrong. I'm listening. Parker glanced around before continuing. The security footage from the Martinson robbery. It clearly shows the shooting. Shadow never attacked. He was protecting your daughter, positioned himself between her and the men when one reached for his gun. Shadow moved forward. But it wasn't aggression. It was defense. And this footage disappeared. Jack kept his voice level despite the rage building inside him. Officer Miller took it, handed it directly to Lieutenant Peterson, who said it wasn't relevant to the investigation. Parker's disgust was evident. Then they wrote a report claiming Shadow attacked the men, justifying the shooting. Why falsify a report about a dog shooting? That's what's been bothering me. Parker leaned forward. These robberies, they're not random. The targets are specific, predominantly families with military connections, especially ones new to the area. And the department's response has been coordinated, minimized. Jack considered this information, adding it to his growing assessment. The coin Detective Blackwood found, have you seen others like it? Parker nodded. 3 times. Always at robbery scenes targeting military families, always disappearing from evidence before being officially logged. Who's directing this coordination within your department? Lieutenant Peterson takes his orders from Police Chief Reynolds, but I think it goes deeper. Parker hesitated. "The challenge coin," I recognized the phrase around the edge. "For those who hunt in the shadows." It's something Lieutenant Peterson says sometimes when he thinks no one's listening. The pieces were aligning too perfectly to be coincidence. Jack produced the mission dossier he'd been compiling, sliding a photograph across the table. "This man, Ethan Walsh. Have you seen him meeting with department leadership?" Parker studied the image, his expression confirming Jack's suspicion before he even spoke. "Yes, private meetings with Peterson and Reynolds, always off record." "How did you—" "He was the shooter, the one who killed Shadow." "How can you be certain?" Jack's eyes hardened. "Because I've encountered him before." The dossier he'd compiled included Walsh's former military service Army Rangers, discharged after questionable decisions during operations in Afghanistan. Since then, Walsh had built a private security company with rumored connections to less than legal operations. But there was something that had nagged at Jack's memory since seeing the challenge coin. Back at home, Jack retreated to his office, pulling out a secure hard drive from his personal safe. Catherine found him there an hour later, staring at old mission photographs with an expression she hadn't seen since Emily's funeral. "Jack," she approached cautiously. "What is it?" He pointed to a figure in the background of a deployment photo, a younger Ethan Walsh standing beside another man. I knew I recognized him from somewhere beyond the security footage. Walsh was attached to a joint operation I commanded in Afghanistan in 2014. His brother James was under my direct command. What happened? Catherine sensed the weight of this connection. James didn't follow protocol during an extraction, endangered the entire team. When the operation went sideways, he was killed. Jack's voice remained steady, but Catherine could hear the submerged emotion. "I wrote the report that determined his actions were the cause of the mission failure. And now his brother is targeting you," Catherine concluded. "This isn't about random robberies. It's personal vengeance." "Not just me." Jack's expression darkened. "Military families. He's punishing those he blames for his brother's death by proxy." Catherine sank into the chair opposite him. "Does Detective Blackwood know this connection?" "Not yet. I need more evidence before bringing her fully into this." "Jack," Catherine's attorney instincts sharpened her tone. "If this is true, Lily could still be in danger. These men know where we live. They've seen her." The realization struck with physical force. Jack had been so focused on investigating that he'd temporarily overlooked the most critical vulnerability. Walsh knew exactly who Lily was and how to hurt Jack most effectively. His phone chimed with an alert from the security system he'd installed, motion detection at the property perimeter. Jack switched to the camera feed, tension coiling through him as he observed a dark SUV passing slowly by their house for the third time in an hour. "We need to move Lily somewhere safer," he decided immediately. "Call Mrs. Whitman. She can stay with her sister in Portland until this is resolved. And, Lily, your office has security. Take her there while I finish this." Catherine nodded, already dialing Mrs. Whitman. Jack checked his weapons, a 9mm handgun legally registered and a combat knife, tools of his trade that he'd hoped never to need in civilian life. The SUV made another pass as Catherine and Lily prepared to leave, this time slowing to a near crawl. Jack memorized the license plate, adding it to his intelligence collection. He embraced Lily before they departed, her small arms clinging to him with surprising strength. "Come with us, Daddy," she pleaded, a tremor in her voice. "I'll join you soon," he promised. "I need to make sure our house is safe first." After they left, Jack contacted Detective Blackwood, sharing his findings about Walsh, the connection to his military past, and the pattern of targeted robberies. "This is bigger than I thought," Blackwood admitted. "If Peterson and Reynolds are involved in covering for Walsh's crew, going through official channels could alert them." "I'm not interested in official channels at this point." Jack's voice held a dangerous edge. "Walsh killed my daughter's dog to send a message. Now I'm going to send one back." "Commander," Blackwood's tone was cautionary, "don't do anything that crosses the line. Let me contact state police. We can build a case without compromising your—" "My what?" "Detective, my military career, my freedom." Jack's laugh held no humor. When a man deliberately traumatizes a 7-year-old child who's already lost her mother, those considerations become secondary. Later that evening, Jack prepared to conduct reconnaissance on Storage Unit 17. His phone rang Catherine's number. "Jack!" Her voice was tight with controlled panic. "Lily's school called. 2 men matching the description of the robbers were seen watching the playground during recess. When teachers approached, they claimed to be looking for their niece." Cold fury washed through him. "Are you both secure?" "Yes. We're at my office. Security has been alerted." "Stay there. I'm handling this tonight." After ending the call, Jack received another Officer Parker, his words tumbling out in frightened haste. "Commander, they know I talked to you. Peterson just put me on administrative leave, seized my badge and gun. But that's not why I'm calling. There's a child missing. Connor Williams, 8 years old, son of Marine Captain Williams, who moved here last month. When disappeared from his front yard an hour ago. His mother saw a dark SUV. Commander, the Williams house is 3 streets over from yours." The final piece locked into place with terrible clarity. Walsh wasn't just sending a message anymore, he was escalating, using an innocent child as leverage or retribution. The clock was now ticking in the most critical way possible. Jack moved with cold efficiency, gathering necessary equipment while contacting Blackwood. "Williams' child, what's being done? Department response is deliberately delayed," she reported grimly. "Peterson is handling it personally, which means evidence will disappear. I'm going outside channels, contacted state police, but they're at least 40 minutes out. I know where they might be taking him. Storage facility on Old Harbor Road, Unit 17. "How certain are you?" "Certain enough. Meet me there armed." Jack's Delta Force training took over as he drove to the storage facility. Mind calculating variables, contingencies, and tactical approaches. Connor Williams had been missing for 97 minutes, still within the critical window for recovery. But every passing moment decreased the odds of a positive outcome. The storage facility was dimly lit, security minimal. Jack parked at a distance, approaching on foot, with the stealth honed through countless covert operations. Unit 17 showed light around its edges and the muted sound of voices within. 2 vehicles were parked nearby Dawson's truck and the dark SUV that had been surveilling Jack's house. Detective Blackwood arrived moments later, her unmarked car lights off, movement deliberate. She wore civilian clothes but carried her service weapon and, Jack noted, a backup ankle piece. "State police are still 20 minutes out," she whispered as they established position behind adjacent units. "What's your assessment?" "At least 2 inside, possibly 3. 1 child. Unknown weapons, but assume armed. Priority is securing the child's safety." Jack's voice was pure operational focus now. You take position covering the side exit. I'll approach from the front when you're in place." "I should wait for backup," Blackwood began, but her words were cut short by a child's muffled cry from within the unit. Jack's expression hardened. "That child doesn't have 20 minutes." Blackwood nodded, moving silently to her assigned position. Jack waited until she signaled readiness, then approached the main door. His movements fluid and precise despite years since his last combat operation. Some skills never fade, especially those honed for protecting the vulnerable. Through a narrow gap in the door, Jack observed 3 men inside the storage unit. Walsh stood over a small boy bound to a chair, while Dawson and Riley sorted through equipment from open duffel bags. The Williams child was alive, frightened, but apparently unharmed. Jack documented the scene with his phone, sending the images to Blackwood and Catherine for insurance. Then, with the silent efficiency that had made him legendary within Delta Force, he prepared to end Ethan Walsh's reign of terror not with the vengeance that had initially driven him, but with the cold, precise justice of a father protecting not just his own child, but someone else's as well. Jack Reeves assessed the storage unit's vulnerabilities with practiced precision. The main door was partially open, a tactical error, offering both visual intelligence and a point of entry. The side exit Blackwood covered showed light beneath it, another escape route to monitor. From his position, Jack could see Walsh pacing before the bound child, gesturing as he spoke in low tones. Riley stood guard by the main door while Dawson sorted through what appeared to be explosive materials, a concerning escalation from simple robbery. Connor Williams sat rigid in the chair, his small body trembling but his chin raised defiantly, the son of a Marine showing remarkable courage. Jack felt a surge of cold fury at the men who would terrorize a child to satisfy their perverted sense of vengeance. He activated his phone's recording function, capturing Walsh's voice for evidence. "Your daddy thought he was so special, didn't he?" Walsh was saying to Connor. "Special Forces, American hero? Did he ever tell you what they really do? The villages they destroy? The families they tear apart? My dad helps people." Connor's voice quavered but held firm. "Is that what he told you?" Walsh laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "They all say that. Commander Reeves said the same thing after he got my brother killed. Necessary sacrifice for the greater good. That's what his report called it." Jack's suspicions crystallized into certainty. This was absolutely personal, with Walsh using innocent children to execute his vendetta against military families. He texted Blackwood, confirmed Walsh identity, explosive materials present, moving in 30 seconds. Her response was immediate. "Back up 10 minutes out. Be careful." Jack removed his shoes, allowing silent movement across the gravel. He positioned himself beside the main door, timing his breath with the ambient sounds of the storage facility, distant traffic, the hum of security lights, the lap of harbor waters beyond. When Riley turned to speak to Dawson, Jack made his move. The first 15 seconds unfolded with the choreographed precision of a ballet performed by predators. Jack slipped through the door, neutralizing Riley with a chokehold before the man could vocalize alarm. As Riley lost consciousness, Jack eased him to the ground, simultaneously drawing his weapon and acquiring Walsh as his primary target. "Federal agent," Jack announced with quiet authority, knowing the lie would create momentary confusion. "Walsh, move away from the child. Dawson, hands where I can see them." The tableau froze Walsh halfway between Connor and a table laden with maps and photographs, Dawson beside the explosives. His hands suddenly stilled. Connor's eyes widened with desperate hope. Well, Walsh recovered first, his shock melting into something like satisfaction. The great Commander Reeves himself. I was wondering how long it would take you to find us. Step away from the boy, Jack repeated, his aim unwavering, or what you'll execute me like you executed my brother. Walsh made no move to comply. James followed your orders, went exactly where you sent him, into that ambush. Your brother disobeyed direct commands, endangered his team, and got himself killed. Jack's voice remained dispassionate, though rage burned beneath. Now I won't ask again. Step away from the child. The standoff stretched for 3 heartbeats before Dawson lunged toward what Jack now recognized as a detonator on the workbench. Jack's training took over target acquisition, threat assessment, decision, action, all compressed into microseconds. His first shot caught Dawson in the shoulder, spinning him away from the explosives and dropping him to one knee. The moment of confusion allowed Walsh to draw his weapon, firing wildly as he grabbed Connor as a shield. The boy cried out as Walsh's arm locked around his neck, the chair toppling as Walsh dragged him backward toward the side exit. "Drop it, Reeves," Walsh shouted, pressing his gun to Connor's temple. "Or the boy dies right now." Jack maintained his aim, calculating angles, risks, and opportunities with the cold mathematics of combat. "This isn't about him, Walsh. It's about your brother. Let the boy go, and we'll talk about James." Something flickered in Walsh's eyes, recognition that Jack had identified his true motivation. "There's nothing to talk about. James is dead because you sacrificed him. Is that what you think happened?" Jack kept his voice level, recognizing the negotiation window opening. "I wrote that report. Walsh, I know exactly what happened that day." While speaking, Jack noticed Connor's subtle movement. The boy was working to free his bound hands, using the edge of a metal shelf behind him. Brave kid. Jack needed to keep Walsh distracted. "You weren't there," Walsh snarled, his grip on Connor tightening. "You sent him ahead as cannon fodder. I was 10 meters behind him when he triggered that IED, Jack countered, the memory razor-sharp despite the years. "I pulled him out while taking fire, held pressure on his wounds until medevac arrived. Did they tell you that part?" Uncertainty flickered across Walsh's face, the first crack in his vengeful certainty. In that momentary hesitation, 2 crucial events occurred simultaneously. Connor freed one hand from his bindings, and the side door burst open as Detective Blackwood entered, weapon trained on Walsh. "Police, drop your weapon!" Her command shattered the tension. Walsh reacted instantly, swinging his gun toward Blackwood. The moment his aim shifted from Connor, Jack fired one precise shot that struck Walsh's right shoulder, causing his weapon to clatter to the floor. Connor twisted free, diving beneath a nearby table as Blackwood rushed forward to secure Walsh. Jack moved to check Dawson, finding him attempting to reach for a concealed weapon. A swift strike rendered him unconscious, allowing Jack to secure both men before turning his attention to Connor. "Hey there, brave man," he said gently, kneeling before the boy's hiding place. "You're Connor, right? I'm Jack. Your dad and I are in similar lines of work." Connor's face was tear-streaked but determined. "Are you really special forces like my dad?" "Something like that," Jack smiled, carefully untying the boy's remaining bonds. "Your dad would be really proud of how you handled yourself today." "Is it over?" Connor whispered, his eyes darting to where Blackwood was handcuffing a groaning Walsh. "It's over," Jack confirmed, helping him stand. Let's get you home to your parents." The next hour unfolded in controlled chaos as state police arrived, securing the scene and the prisoners. Evidence collection teams documented the explosives, maps, and photographs revealing a wide-ranging conspiracy targeting military families. Jack provided his statement to Blackwood and her state police counterparts, carefully omitting certain tactical details while ensuring the core facts were documented. "They were planning something bigger," Blackwood said quietly, as they watched Connor reunite with his parents outside. The Williams family clung to each other. The father, Captain Williams, meeting Jack's eyes over his son's head with the silent understanding that exists between warriors. "The explosives weren't just for show," Jack agreed. The maps had multiple locations marked all homes of military personnel recently moved to the area. "And the photographs?" Blackwood asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. "Children. They were targeting the children." Jack's voice held controlled fury. Walsh was escalating from traumatizing kids by killing pets to something much worse. Blackwood shook her head, disgust evident. "We found records going back 18 months, systematic campaigns against military families in 3 coastal communities, always starting with surveillance, then property crimes, escalating to pet killings, and now kidnapping and planned explosives," Jack finished. Walsh blamed the military for his brother's death. This was his revenge, targeting the families of those he considered responsible. "And your daughter Shadow? Lily was the primary target all along." Jack's jaw tightened. "Walsh knew exactly who I was, knew my connection to his brother's death. Shadow interfered with their initial plan to approach Lily." Blackwood studied him for a long moment. "You know, the way you handled this tonight, that wasn't vengeance. That was justice." "There's a difference," Jack acknowledged, thinking of Catherine's earlier words. "A big one," Blackwood agreed. "You had Walsh at gunpoint, could have taken the shot, claimed self-defense. No one would have questioned it." "Connor was watching," Jack said simply. "Some lessons matter more than others." As they spoke, another commotion erupted as police vehicles arrived, disgorging uniformed officers who approached with clear purpose. Jack recognized Lieutenant Peterson leading them, his expression thunderous. "Detective Blackwood," Peterson barked. "You are relieved of duty effective immediately. Surrender your weapon and badge." Blackwood stood her ground. "On whose authority?" "Chief Reynolds. Insubordination and interference with an ongoing investigation." Peterson's eyes shifted to Jack. "And you?" "Reeves, you're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer, assault, and interfering with police business." Before either could respond, Captain Williams stepped forward, his Marine bearing unmistakable. "This man just rescued my son while your department did nothing. Lieutenant, this doesn't concern you." "Captain." Peterson dismissed him. "Actually, it does." The new voice belonged to a gray-haired woman in an impeccable suit, flanked by 2 serious-looking men in dark blazers. "Captain Eleanor Richardson, State Police." "Lieutenant Peterson, Chief Reynolds, and Officers Miller and Thompson are the ones being relieved of duty, effective immediately." She produced documentation, handing it to a stunned Peterson. "Search warrants for department records, personal residences, and electronic communications. We have evidence of systematic obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and criminal conspiracy in relation to the Walsh case." Jack watched as understanding dawned on Peterson's face, the realization that his protection of Walsh had been documented and the web of corruption was unraveling. The lieutenant's hand twitched toward his weapon, but the state police officers moved with practiced efficiency. disarming and restraining him before he could act. "Commander Reeves!" Captain Richardson approached, extending her hand. "Your sister Catherine contacted our office with extensive documentation. That, combined with Detective Blackwood's evidence and your actions tonight, has broken open a case we've been building for months." Jack accepted her handshake, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact of someone accustomed to command. "My sister has always been thorough." "Indeed. She mentioned you might need medical attention." Richardson glanced pointedly at Jack's side, where blood was slowly seeping through his shirt. Walsh's wild shot had connected after all. "It's superficial." Jack dismissed, though the wound was beginning to throb as adrenaline subsided. Blackwood noticed the injury and insisted on immediate medical attention. As paramedics treated the graze wound, Jack's phone rang Catherine. "Is it over?" she asked without preamble. "It's over," Jack confirmed, watching as Walsh and Dawson were loaded into separate police vehicles. "How's Lily?" "Asking for you. They found the missing boy. Safe, traumatized, but unharmed." Jack winced as the paramedic cleaned his wound. "We were right about Walsh. This was about James all along." "Jack," Catherine's voice softened, "you're hurt, aren't you?" "Nothing serious. I'll be there soon." After being cleared by medical personnel, Jack provided additional statements to Captain Richardson, ensuring all evidence was properly documented and secured. The state police investigation would continue, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. As dawn approached, Detective Blackwood drove Jack to Catherine's office building, both exhausted but satisfied with the night's outcome. "What happens now?" Blackwood asked as they arrived. "Justice takes its course," Jack replied, his thoughts already with Lily. "Walsh faces federal charges for kidnapping, weapons violations, conspiracy, and attempted murder. The corruption in your department gets cleaned out, and you—" Blackwood's question held genuine concern. "What does Commander Reeves do after saving the day?" Jack considered this as he gazed up at the office windows where Lily waited. "He becomes just Jack again, a father who needs to help his daughter heal." Inside, he found Lily curled in a makeshift bed on Catherine's office couch, her small face peaceful in sleep for the first time since Shadow's death. Catherine looked up from her desk. Legal documents spread before her. "Captain Richardson has been extremely cooperative," she reported quietly. "The state police had suspected corruption in Oak Ridge PD for months but couldn't identify the connections to Walsh. Our evidence broke the case open." Jack nodded, his attention fixed on Lily. "She okay?" "Better once she sees you're safe." Catherine followed his gaze. "You did good, Jack. Not just catching them, but how you did it. That matters too." That's what Blackwood said. "Smart woman." Catherine smiled slightly. "When Lily wakes up, I think you should tell her what happened, not all the details, but enough. She needs to know there are consequences for bad actions, that justice exists." "And Shadow?" Jack asked softly. "How do I make that right for her?" Catherine squeezed his arm gently. "You don't. Some losses can't be undone. But you've given her something important today. You've shown her that her father keeps his promises, that evil doesn't win, and that she's worth fighting for. That's no small thing." "Jack," as if sensing their conversation. Lily stirred, her eyes blinking open. When she saw Jack, she launched herself from the couch into his arms. seemingly unnoticed by his injured side. "Daddy, you're okay." Her voice was stronger than it had been since Shadow's death. "Did you find the bad men?" Jack held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the small, precious weight of her against his chest. "I found them, sweetheart. They can't hurt anyone else now." "Did they hurt the other little boy?" Lily's question revealed how much she'd understood of the adults' worried conversations. "No, he's safe with his parents now," Jack assured her. "The police have the bad men in jail." Lily was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she looked up, her eyes so like Emily's searching his face. "Shadow would be happy, wouldn't he, that you stopped them?" Jack's throat tightened. "Yes, Lily. Shadow would be very happy. He was the bravest dog ever," Lily declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "He saved me." "He did," Jack agreed, holding her closer. "And we'll never forget how brave he was." Outside the office windows, the first golden rays of sunrise broke over the harbor, illuminating the three of them in warm light, a father, a daughter, and the beginning of their healing journey. The road ahead would not be easy, but in this moment, with Lily safe in his arms and justice in progress, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced since Emily's death hope. The sterile hospital corridor seemed endless as Catherine guided Lily toward the intensive care unit. 6 hours had passed since Jack collapsed in her office, the superficial wound having concealed a more serious internal injury. What the paramedics had diagnosed as a graze had actually nicked an artery, causing slow but steady internal bleeding that finally manifested when Jack's adrenaline ebbed completely. "Is Daddy going to die like Mommy did?" Lily's whispered question cut through Catherine's heart like a blade. The child had already lost too much her mother, her beloved Shadow, and now her father lay unconscious after emergency surgery. "No, sweetheart." Catherine knelt to eye level with her niece, summoning conviction she didn't entirely feel. "The doctors are very good here. Daddy is very strong, and he's fighting to get better." Lily nodded solemnly, clutching the small stuffed German shepherd that Mrs. Whitman had brought to the hospital, a poor substitute for Shadow, but one Lily hadn't released since receiving it. Catherine marveled at her niece's resilience, even as she worried about the compounding traumas the 7-year-old had endured. Detective Blackwood met them outside Jack's room, her expression softening at the sight of Lily. After the raid, Blackwood had remained with Jack while Catherine brought Lily to the hospital, serving as unofficial protection and liaison with the medical staff. "How is he?" Catherine asked quietly. "Stable," Blackwood replied, keeping her voice deliberately reassuring for Lily's benefit. "The doctor says the surgery went well. They've repaired the damaged artery and his vitals are improving." Lily approached Jack's bed with cautious steps, her eyes wide at the sight of her powerful father rendered vulnerable by medical equipment and IV lines. Catherine helped her into a chair beside the bed, where Lily immediately reached for Jack's hand, her small fingers wrapping around his larger ones. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. "It's me, Lily. I brought my new stuffed dog to help you feel better." Catherine turned away, blinking back tears at the sight. Blackwood touched her elbow, guiding her a few steps from the bed. "Captain Richardson asked me to update you," Blackwood said in hushed tones. "Walsh is in custody at the state facility. Security protocols in place. He's talking, trying to cut a deal by implicating others. What about the department corruption? Catherine's attorney instincts remained sharp despite her emotional exhaustion. "Chief Reynolds resigned this morning. 4 officers, including Peterson, have been suspended pending investigation. The state police have established temporary oversight of the department." Blackwood hesitated. "There's something else. Walsh's personal records revealed disturbing information about your sister-in-law's death." Catherine stiffened. "Emily, what about her?" "It appears her cancer diagnosis may have been—" Blackwood searched for the appropriate word. "Facilitated." Walsh had connections at the pharmaceutical company where she received experimental treatment. There are indications he may have tampered with her medication. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Catherine's feet. "Are you saying Walsh murdered Emily as part of his vendetta against Jack?" "The evidence is preliminary but concerning. Captain Richardson has ordered a full investigation, including exhumation if necessary." Blackwood's expression conveyed her genuine regret at delivering such news. "I'm sorry, Catherine. I thought you should know before it potentially becomes public." Catherine glanced at Lily, still whispering encouragement to her unconscious father, blissfully unaware of this new horror. "Does Jack know this?" "No. Only Captain Richardson, myself, and now you." "Keep it that way for now," Catherine decided immediately. "He needs to focus on recovery. I'll decide when and how to tell him." Their conversation was interrupted by movement at the bed. Jack's fingers had twitched in response to Lily's voice. Catherine rushed to his side as his eyelids fluttered, fighting against the lingering effects of anesthesia. "Daddy!" Lily's voice rose in hopeful excitement. "Daddy! Can you hear me?" Jack's eyes opened gradually, unfocused at first, then sharpening as they found his daughter's face. He tried to speak but could only manage a hoarse whisper. Catherine helped him with a small ice chip as the doctor arrived, alerted by the monitors registering Jack's awakening. The medical assessment proceeded efficiently, confirming Jack's remarkably fast recovery trajectory, a testament to his peak physical condition prior to injury. When the doctor finally left, Jack turned his attention fully to Lily, managing a weak smile that transformed his haggard face. "Hey, brave girl," he whispered. "I'm sorry I scared you." Lily's lower lip trembled. "You promised you wouldn't leave me like Mommy did." "And I'm keeping that promise," Jack assured her, his voice strengthening with determination. "It takes more than this to keep me from my lily flower." While Jack and Lily reconnected, Catherine stepped outside with Blackwood to receive an update from Captain Richardson by phone. The news was both reassuring and alarming. Walsh's network was unraveling rapidly as evidence mounted. But there were indications that at least one associate remained unaccounted for, potentially the most dangerous one. Victor Decker, Richardson informed them. Former private security contractor with connections to several extremist groups. Walsh's communications indicate Decker was handling surveillance of military families, including yours. We haven't located him yet. Catherine's blood ran cold. Could he be a threat to Jack or Lily? "We're treating it as a possibility," Richardson confirmed. "I've stationed plainclothes officers at the hospital and requested federal assistance for continued protection once Jack is discharged." After ending the call, Catherine returned to Jack's room to find Lily had crawled carefully onto the bed beside her father, her small body curled protectively against his uninjured side. She was showing him drawings she'd made, colorful crayon illustrations of shadow playing in heaven, of bad men being taken away by police, of their family reunited. "And this is Shadow watching over us from the stars," Lily explained, pointing to a particularly poignant image of a silver-tipped German shepherd surrounded by golden stars. "Mrs. Whitman says that's where good dogs go, and they keep protecting their people forever." Jack's eyes met Catherine's over Lily's head, communicating volumes in a single look: gratitude for her care of Lily, determination to recover quickly, and the unspoken question about the conversation in the hallway. Catherine gave a subtle shake of her head, indicating they would discuss it later. The moment was interrupted by a hospital orderly entering with a flower arrangement, an elegant display of lilies and roses with a small teddy bear attached. "Delivery for Commander Reeves," the young man announced cheerfully. Something about his manner triggered Catherine's instincts. "Who sent those?" she asked sharply. The orderly checked the card. "Just says, an old friend watching over you. Is something wrong?" Catherine exchanged alarmed glances with Blackwood, who immediately moved to intercept the arrangement. "Sir, could you place those at the nurse's station instead? The patient has allergies." As the confused orderly complied, Blackwood discreetly photographed him walking away, sending the image to Captain Richardson with an urgent text. Catherine moved to the window, scanning the parking lot below with new awareness of the lingering threat they still faced. Jack, despite his weakened state, had registered the tension. "Kate." His voice carried the command presence that had served him through countless missions. "Just being cautious," she assured him, though her expression betrayed her concern. "Everything's under control." But as she watched Blackwood quietly direct uniformed officers to search the hospital corridors, Catherine knew the nightmare wasn't truly over. The immediate danger had passed, but shadows still lurked at the edges of their lives, watching, waiting, planning. The battle for justice had been won, but the war for their safety continued. Captain Eleanor Richardson studied the surveillance images spread across her makeshift command center in the State Police Mobile Unit. The orderly, who had delivered flowers to Jack Reeves's hospital room, had been identified as Michael Brennan, a former associate of Victor Decker with ties to private military contractors. He had disappeared before officers could apprehend him, but his presence confirmed their worst fears. Decker was still actively monitoring the Reeves family. "He's too professional for this to be a simple revenge play," Richardson observed to Detective Blackwood, who had joined the operation after ensuring hospital security was reinforced. This level of surveillance, the coordinated efforts Walsh and Decker were building something more systematic than personal vengeance. "Walsh's interrogation transcripts suggest as much," Blackwood agreed, reviewing the file. "He's been surprisingly forthcoming since realizing the extent of evidence against him. According to his statement, they called themselves the Neighborhood Integrity Coalition, essentially a vigilante group targeting military families they believed represented government overreach." Richardson's expression darkened. "Domestic terrorism disguised as community protection, with apparent support from corrupted local officials," Blackwood added. Walsh claims Chief Reynolds was fully aware of their activities, even providing intelligence on new military families moving into the area. The captain's phone rang. Catherine Reeves calling from the hospital. Richardson activated the speaker function, allowing Blackwood to listen. "Jack's doctors are discussing discharge tomorrow," Catherine reported without preamble. "They're amazed at his recovery rate. I don't think we should return to our house until Decker is apprehended." "Agreed," Richardson responded. "We've arranged a safe house 20 miles inland, fully secured, remote location. A protection detail will escort you there directly from the hospital." "There's something else." Catherine's voice lowered. I need to discuss the information about Emily's treatment. Jack knows something's wrong. He can read me too well." Richardson exchanged glances with Blackwood. The investigation into Emily Reeves's cancer treatment had yielded disturbing evidence Walsh's brother James had worked briefly at the pharmaceutical company, developing the experimental protocol Emily received. Preliminary testing of preserved medication samples showed evidence of tampering not enough to cause immediate death, but sufficient to reduce effectiveness and accelerate disease progression. "We've confirmed contamination in the preserved samples," Richardson said carefully. "Forensic pharmacologists are still determining exactly what substances were introduced, but the intent appears deliberate." Catherine's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. "So Walsh didn't just kill Shadow and threaten Lily, he murdered Emily too, by ensuring her treatment would fail." "The evidence strongly suggests that," Richardson confirmed. "We're building a case for first-degree murder, but we need more time to establish the chain of evidence conclusively." "Jack needs to know." Catherine's voice was resolute now, legal training overcoming emotion. "Not just for closure, but for security. If Decker was involved in Emily's death as well, he may have specific tactics he's planning to repeat." After ending the call, Richardson turned to the intelligence officer who had been monitoring Walsh's known associates. "Update on Decker's whereabouts." "Nothing concrete, Captain. His credit cards haven't been used. Phones are dark. He's operating off-grid, probably using cash and burner phones." The young officer hesitated. "There is one concerning development. He withdrew $50,000 cash from an offshore account 3 days ago. That's professional hit money." Richardson's jaw tightened. "Reconfigure the protection detail. I want combat-experienced officers only. Preferably with Special Forces background. Commander Reeves isn't just a witness now, he's a high-priority target." At the hospital, Catherine sat beside Jack's bed, watching Lily sleep in the cot the nurses had provided. The child had refused to leave her father's side, her small body finally surrendering to exhaustion after the emotional strain of recent days. Catherine had debated waiting until they reached the safe house to share the information about Emily, but Jack's increasingly pointed questions made delay impossible. "Whatever you're not telling me," Jack said quietly. "It's time. Kate." Catherine took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts as she would for a difficult legal brief. "The investigation into Walsh uncovered information about Emily's illness." Jack's expression remained neutral, though his eyes sharpened with focus. "What kind of information?" "Evidence of tampering with her experimental cancer treatment." Catherine kept her voice steady, clinical. "Walsh's brother James worked briefly for the pharmaceutical company. Preserved samples show contamination that would have reduced treatment efficacy while accelerating disease progression." The silence that followed seemed to expand, filling the hospital room with its weight. Jack's gaze moved to Lily's sleeping form, his face revealing nothing of the earthquake surely occurring beneath the surface. "You're saying Walsh murdered Emily?" he finally stated, voice devoid of inflection. "As part of his vendetta against me?" "The evidence is still being processed, but yes, that's what it appears to indicate." Jack closed his eyes briefly, his only visible reaction a slight tightening of his jaw. When he looked at Catherine again, she recognized the expression, the same controlled, deadly focus she'd glimpsed when he prepared to search for Connor Williams. "How long have you known?" "2 days. I wanted confirmation before telling you." Jack nodded once, acknowledgement rather than approval. Decker was involved. It wasn't a question, but Catherine answered anyway. Likely. The operation would have required someone with his surveillance skills and access to controlled substances, which means he's not just continuing Walsh's vendetta, he's protecting himself from murder charges. Jack's tactical mind was already processing implications, calculating threats and responses. That changes his motivation, makes him more dangerous. Captain Richardson is arranging a safe house and protection detail. A ghost of a smile, cold and without humor, crossed Jack's face. With all due respect to the captain, there's no one better qualified to protect Lily than me. Jack, Catherine began, but he cut her off with a gesture. I know what you're going to say, that I'm injured, that professionals are handling this, that vengeance won't bring Emily back. His voice remained calm, reasonable. You're right about all of it, but this isn't about vengeance anymore. Kate, it's about justice for Emily, for Shadow, for all the families these people have terrorized. Catherine studied her brother, recognizing the implacable resolve behind his words. Delta Force hadn't simply trained Jack. It had forged him into someone who calculated risks differently than ordinary people, who possessed capabilities few civilians could comprehend. What are you planning? She asked directly. To end this, Jack replied simply. Permanently. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Detective Blackwood entered, carrying a manila envelope, and wearing an expression that immediately put Catherine on alert. Commander? Blackwood nodded to Jack. Catherine, I have information that couldn't wait. She removed several photographs from the envelope, displaying them carefully. These were found in Walsh's storage unit, hidden in a false bottom of the equipment case. They span the last 3 years. The photograph showed Emily Reeves at medical appointments, shopping, collecting Lily from school. The surveillance was comprehensive, professional, and chilling in its thoroughness. The final image showed Emily receiving her cancer diagnosis, her face captured through a medical office window in a moment of devastating vulnerability. Walsh kept a journal, Blackwood continued, producing a photocopy of handwritten pages. In it, he details the operation against your family, including Emily's treatment sabotage. He calls it Project Widowmaker, deliberately creating military widows and orphans as retribution for perceived wrongs. Jack accepted the journal pages with steady hands, reading the meticulous documentation of his wife's murder, the cold calculation behind Emily's suffering, the systematic destruction of his family unit, the planned targeting of Lily once Emily was gone. There's more, Blackwood said gently. Walsh wasn't working alone in targeting your family specifically. The journal mentions a primary architect who selected your family as the demonstration case. Decker, Jack stated with absolute certainty. Not just Decker, Blackwood corrected, pointing to a passage in the journal. According to this, the architect had personal knowledge of your missions, your family situation, your security protocols. Someone with inside access to military personnel records and deployment information. The implications crystallized with terrible clarity. Jack looked up from the pages, his expression hardening as the final piece locked into place. Someone in my chain of command betrayed us. We believe so, Blackwood confirmed. And if Walsh's journal is accurate, that person is still actively guiding Decker's current operations against you and Lily. The heart monitor beside Jack's bed registered a momentary acceleration, the only external sign of the cold fury now coursing through him. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm, the voice of a man who had reached absolute clarity of purpose. "I need everything you have on Walsh's military and civilian contacts. Phone records, financial transactions, meeting locations, everything. And I need to speak with Captain Richardson about modifying the safe house plans." Catherine recognized her brother's tone, not the vengeful rage she had feared, but something perhaps more dangerous, the precise, methodical determination of a Delta Force commander preparing for his most important mission yet. 3 months later, autumn painted the Maine coastline in brilliant hues of crimson and gold as Jack and Lily Reeves pulled into the parking lot of the Coastal Animal Shelter. The facility, a renovated farmhouse surrounded by spacious exercise yards, specialized in rehabilitating traumatized animals and finding them appropriate homes. Jack glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror, noting the mixture of anticipation and apprehension in her expression. "You sure you're ready for this, Lily Flower?" he asked gently. "There's no rush. We can come back another time if you'd prefer." Lily clutched her small backpack containing drawings she'd made for prospective pets and nodded with the solemn determination that had become characteristic since Shadow's death. "Dr. Bennett says it might help me feel better," she replied, referencing her child psychologist. "And," her voice softened, "I think Shadow would want me to have a friend again." Jack's throat tightened at his daughter's resilience. The path to this moment had been arduous and dangerous, marked by a final confrontation with Victor Decker that had nearly cost Jack his life again. The revelation of Colonel Andrew Mercer Jack's former commanding officer as the architect behind the targeting of his family had shaken the military community and led to sweeping security reviews throughout Special Operations Command. The subsequent federal investigation had uncovered a network of corruption extending beyond Oak Ridge, with tentacles reaching into 3 states and multiple law enforcement agencies. Walsh had received multiple life sentences, one for each life he had taken or irreparably damaged, including Emily's. Colonel Mercer, confronted with overwhelming evidence of his betrayal, had taken his own life before facing trial, denying many victims the closure of justice properly served. But today wasn't about the past. Today was about moving forward, about Lily's healing, about reclaiming the simple joys that Shadow's death and the subsequent dangers had temporarily stolen from them. "Let's go meet some dogs," Jack said, helping Lily from the car. Her small hand found his as they walked toward the entrance, a gesture that had become more frequent as her sense of security gradually returned. Inside, the shelter manager, a kind-faced woman in her 50s named Margaret, greeted them warmly. "The Reeves family. We've been expecting you. Lily, I understand you're interested in meeting some of our special residents today." Lily nodded, still partially hiding behind Jack's leg. Her shyness around strangers hadn't fully abated. Despite Dr. Bennett's excellent therapy work, "We have several dogs who might be a good match," Margaret continued, leading them through a corridor lined with comfortable enclosures rather than traditional kennels. "Based on your phone conversation, Commander Reeves, I've selected a few who have gentler temperaments but still possess protective instincts. They passed several hopeful candidates, a dignified older Labrador, an energetic Border Collie mix, a patient Rottweiler, but none seemed to spark particular interest from Lily. As they approached the final enclosure, Margaret hesitated. "This little one just arrived last week," she explained. "She's quite young, about 4 months old, and was found abandoned on the highway. She's a mixed breed, primarily shepherd from the looks of her, though smaller than a purebred would be. Inside the enclosure, a golden-brown puppy with distinctive black markings on her face and one floppy ear sat watching them attentively. Unlike the other dogs who had rushed to greet potential adopters, this one maintained a calm, observant posture, her intelligent eyes seeming to assess the humans before deciding how to respond. "Her name is Stella," Margaret said. The vet who treated her when she was found thought the name suited her coloring like a little star. For the first time since entering the shelter, Lily stepped forward without prompting, approaching the enclosure with growing curiosity. "May I say hello to her?" she asked quietly. Margaret opened the gate, allowing Lily to enter. She knelt slowly, remembering the proper way to approach an unfamiliar dog techniques Jack had taught her when Shadow first joined their family. The puppy remained seated, watching Lily with perceptive eyes that seemed too wise for her young age. "Hi, Stella," Lily whispered, extending her hand, palm down, for the puppy to sniff. "My name is Lily." The moment hung suspended as the puppy considered this introduction. Then, with deliberate gentleness, Stella rose and approached, sniffing Lily's hand before giving it a small lick. Something in Lily's expression shifted, a subtle softening, a glimpse of the carefree child she had been before tragedy struck. "She likes me, Daddy," Lily said, wonder filling her voice as Stella leaned against her knee, accepting gentle strokes along her back. "She certainly does," Jack agreed, watching the interaction with careful attention. Though no dog could ever replace Shadow, his training, his history with their family, his ultimate sacrifice, Jack recognized something promising in Stella's calm demeanor and obvious intelligence. "Would you like to spend some time getting to know her better?" Margaret suggested. "We have a play yard where you can interact without the enclosure between you." In the outdoor space, Stella's personality emerged more fully playful, but not hyperactive, attentive to Lily's commands despite minimal training, and displaying surprising protectiveness when a loud noise from the parking lot startled them. The puppy immediately positioned herself beside Lily, alert but not aggressive, in a posture reminiscent of Shadow's protective stance. Jack exchanged glances with Margaret, who nodded in understanding. "She's showing natural guardian tendencies," the shelter manager observed quietly. "Not common in puppies so young. With proper training, she could develop into an excellent companion and protector." After an hour of interaction, the decision seemed inevitable. As they completed the adoption paperwork, Lily sat on a bench with Stella, already bonding over a simple game of tug with a rope toy the shelter had provided. "She's not a replacement," Jack said softly, kneeling beside his daughter as Margaret processed their application in another room. "Nothing could ever replace Shadow." "I know, Daddy," Lily replied, her expression more mature than her 7 years would suggest. "Shadow was my hero. He saved my life." She looked down at Stella, who had curled contentedly against her leg. "But maybe Stella needs us as much as we need her." On the drive home, Stella sat calmly in Lily's lap, occasionally looking out the window with curious interest at her new world. Jack observed them in the rearview mirror, noting the protective way Lily cradled the puppy and the equally protective way Stella positioned herself, already forming the bond that would help both of them heal. As they approached their new home, a comfortable waterfront cottage several towns away from Oak Ridge, chosen for its security features as much as its peaceful setting, Jack felt a weight lifting that he hadn't fully acknowledged had been there. The past months had been a crucible, testing his abilities, his values, and his capacity to protect what mattered most. The justice he'd secured hadn't come easily or without cost. The lingering pain in his side on cold mornings served as a permanent reminder of his final confrontation with Decker. But watching Lily whisper secrets to Stella, seeing the first genuine smile his daughter had managed since Shadow's death, Jack recognized the true victory. Not in the enemies defeated or the conspiracies exposed, but in the resilience of a 7-year-old girl who had lost too much yet still found the courage to love again. As they pulled into their driveway, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant orange and pink, casting long shadows across their front yard. Mrs. Whitman, who had relocated to be near them after selling her Oak Ridge home, waved from her porch across the street, her elderly face lighting up at the sight of the puppy in Lily's arms. "Is that a new pup I see?" she called cheerfully, making her way slowly toward them. "Her name is Stella," Lily announced, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "She was all alone, but she's part of our family now." "Well, she's beautiful," Mrs. Whitman declared, bending carefully to meet the puppy. "And it does my old heart good to see you smiling again, child." That evening, as Lily slept with Stella curled at the foot of her bed, not in Shadow's old bed, but in a new one they had chosen together, Jack sat on the porch swing, gazing at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. Catherine joined him, offering a cup of coffee as she settled beside him. "She's going to be okay," Catherine said, following his gaze toward Lily's bedroom window. "You both are." Jack nodded, allowing himself to accept this truth. "We are." The path to healing stretched before them, neither simple nor straight, but navigable now that the immediate dangers had passed. Justice had been served not through the vengeance Jack had initially craved, but through the systematic dismantling of the network that had targeted his family and others like them. Emily's killers had been exposed, Shadow's sacrifice honored, and Lily's future secured. As the first stars appeared above the ocean, Jack thought of Shadow, of Emily, of all they had lost and all they had endured. The pain would never completely vanish, nor should it, for it honored those no longer with them. But alongside that pain, new possibilities were emerging: Stella's puppyish enthusiasm, Lily's tentative return to childhood joys, and the quiet certainty that tomorrow held promise rather than threat. "Look, Daddy." Lily's voice came unexpectedly as she appeared in the doorway, Stella at her heels. She pointed to the brightest star visible in the evening sky. "Do you think that's where Shadow is watching from?" Jack lifted his daughter onto his lap, Stella settling contentedly at their feet. "I think Shadow is watching over us from everywhere," he said softly. "That's what the very best guardians do. They never really leave us, even when we can't see them anymore." Lily leaned her head against his chest, her small hand finding his. "I miss him, and Mommy too. I know. Lilyflower. I miss them too." Jack kissed the top of her head. "But they would be so proud of how brave you've been." Together they watched the stars multiply across the darkening sky, a father, a daughter, and a puppy beginning their journey forward, carrying their memories with honor while embracing the promise of new beginnings. The wounds would heal, though scars would remain. The losses would be honored, though joy would return. And love, the kind that had guided Shadow to protect Lily with his life, would continue to light their path forward, one day at a time, in our twilight years, We've witnessed the evolving landscape of America, its triumphs and its failures. We've seen promises of equality too often unfulfilled, and systems that sometimes protect power rather than people. Commander Reeves's story reminds us that justice, while imperfect, remains possible when courage meets wisdom, like many of our generation who fought battles both abroad and at home. Reeves understood that the greatest strength lies not in vengeance, but in principled persistence. His struggle echoes our own experiences with institutions that resist change and the painful lessons we've learned about choosing our battles wisely. Yet his ultimate victory affirms what we've always known, that love for our children, for our communities, for our ideals sustains us through darkness. The bond between father and daughter, tested by unimaginable loss, speaks to the resilience we've cultivated through decades of our own trials. As we watch younger generations navigate these same waters, let us share this wisdom. True justice heals rather than harms, builds rather than destroys, and ultimately allows wounded hearts like Lily's to find their way back to joy. This is our legacy to them, not perfect solutions, but the unshakable belief that tomorrow can be better than today.